We're at it again with part 4 of the chemistry section. We're picking up with the topic of salts. Salts are compounds that will dissociate in water like the acids and bases we just finished talking about. When salts dissociate, they become ions, but not a hydrogen ion or a hydroxyl ion. They don't dissociate into one of those components, because if they did, they would be an acid or base. Salts dissociate into other types of ions. These ions, the cations or the anions, are often referred to as electrolytes when we are talking about biology. These ions, the electrolytes, will serve roles in chemical reactions and often assist in enzymatic functionality, which we'll come back to in a later chapter of the book. Enzymes are important for chemical reactions, obviously, and electrolytes, these ions such as calcium or magnesium or zinc, etc., they come from salts, and the ions are referred to as electrolytes in our system. Remember how water interacts with ions, how opposite charges align themselves. We're about to dive into organic macromolecules. If you don't know what an organic is referring to, organic is really talking about the molecules important for life and contain carbon atoms. So carbon-containing molecules are referred to as organic molecules. These include the large macromolecules, which are important to cellular functions. Proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, like your DNA and RNA, and carbohydrates are all large organic molecules. We will be going through each one of those types of macromolecules, looking at the important components, the subunits they're made from, and the characteristics that are important to these macromolecules. But before we get there, we're going to look at what are called functional groups. These are clusters of atoms that are arranged in a particular way. These arrangements we find over and over again on different molecules. These are the functional groups. As we move into this section, it would be wise for you to write down some of the things, and hopefully when you study, you can work to be able to recall these facts from memory and also be able to draw the structures out. The structures you should be able to draw are the functional groups as line drawings depicting the covalent bonds. The first structure that we're going to be talking about, the first functional group, is called hydroxyl. I've already mentioned that group before as an ion. So this is an oxygen and a hydrogen. If we look over here, that we can see that there are two spheres. One is the larger red one and then the smaller white one. The larger sphere is representing oxygen and the smaller one a hydrogen. If you remember that these atoms are going to be sharing an electron pair, making a covalent bond. Oxygen needs two pairs to be happy, right? Well, this one stick, which is representing a covalent bond, is attaching the oxygen to the hydrogen. The other stick is attaching the oxygen to the larger molecule. The oxygen has its two covalent bonds, and hydrogen has its one. The sponge rules are satisfied. This hydroxyl group can be attached to lots of different molecules. There's an example over here showing ethanol, where you see the hydroxyl group that is boxed in lavender kind of color. I want you to point out that this way has been written, this chemical shorthand, the -OH or an H-O. That's understood generally by people that understand chemistry, but it's assuming that you understand that there is a covalent bond between the oxygen and the hydrogen. So a more clear way of writing this out would be like that, where you see the oxygen has its two covalent bonds indicated by lines, and one is going to attach to the other molecule, and the second covalent bond attaches the oxygen to the hydrogen. So when I'm asking you to draw this out in the future, please draw it out in that manner so that I can understand that you really do understand where the covalent bonds are. If you draw the chemical shorthand, I'm not sure that you really understand that, okay? So make sure that you can write out that hydroxyl group like that. The second chemical structure that we're going to be talking about is a carbonyl. A carbonyl structure is a double bonded oxygen and carbon. So there's a double covalent bond between the carbon and the oxygen. This particular functional group can be found in the middle of a molecule, as you can see over here. Or it can also be found at the end of a molecule, like over here. If it's in the middle of a molecule, it's called a ketone, as you note on the labeling. And if it's at the end, it's an aldehyde. These terms really won't be used by me in this course, but if you hear them, now maybe you'll know what they are, and you will see them again when you get to chemistry, especially within biochemistry type of topics. So this carbonyl is a carbon double bonded to oxygen. And if you remember, you have to have 4 covalent bonds in order to satisfy the carbon's need for that full outer valence shell with the electrons. And you can see that it does have 4, right? Here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's our second functional group. Our third functional group is carboxyl. This is common. A carboxyl group is a carbon that has a double bonded oxygen, and it also has a hydroxyl group. You'll notice again that the hydroxyl has been written in that chemical shorthand. So the ball and stick type of structure shown over here, you can see that we have a carbon, we have an oxygen, which is double bonded, and we have another oxygen over here, and we have a hydrogen right here. The covalent bonds, again, are shown by the sticks, or they're written in shorthand as in the purple box. And if you were to draw it out, I would prefer, if I was asking you about it on the exam, that you have the covalent bond attached to the carbon that will attach the carbonyl group to the larger molecule, right? Like this. And then you have the oxygen, and you have a hydrogen, like that. So I prefer you draw it out, the carboxyl, in that manner. Remember, if you see me prompt that says something to the effect of be sure to draw all the covalent bonds, I'm really trying to draw your attention to the fact that I don't want you to do something like this. I need you to do something that, like that, right? All right, well, so what's important about carboxyl? Well, carboxyl is actually an acidic group because the carboxyl group will give up the hydrogen. So this hydrogen that's right here, that will dissociate once the molecule containing the carboxyl is dissolved in water. So what you can see is that you will end up with an anion, because that oxygen will give up the hydrogen ion. It will keep the electron and let the proton of the hydrogen go. The hydrogen ion floats away, and therefore a molecule with the carboxyl group is acidic because the carboxyl group gives up that hydrogen. So as you can see, the carboxyl group itself has functional groups within it, the hydroxyl and the double bonded oxygen. The next group is an amino group. An amino group is a nitrogen containing group. You can see that it has a nitrogen right there. Nitrogen, if you remember from our sponge rule, needs 3 covalent bonds to be satisfied. So you can see those 3 depicted in the purple highlighted box. There are 2 hydrogens attached to the nitrogen, and then you have that particular covalent bond that attaches the group to the larger molecule. So you can look at the example over here, which is glycine, the simplest amino acid. It has an amino group. We're going to come back a little later in this chapter to look at amino acids in general, but I'm just going to pose this to you. Does that look familiar to you right there? So can you name it? Can you name that group? We'll come back to amino acids in protein and you will see if you were right. What you want to remember about the characteristic of an amino group is that it can take on an extra proton. It absorbs protons and it can exist in this form in solution. If it can pick up a proton and then it acts like a base because it absorbs extra hydrogens from the solution. By doing that, the pH is going to go up since there would be less free hydrogen ions in the solution. The fifth group is called sulfhydryl. Sulfhydryl, as the name kind of implies, has a sulfur in it. It has been written in the chemical shorthand right here, right? It's written as SH. As you might expect, just like with the hydroxyl, it's shorthand because if you look at the ball and stick, you can see that we have a sulfur molecule or atom right there, and you have the hydrogen atom right here. And they're attached by a covalent bond. Sulfur needs 2 covalent bonds to be satisfied, so this second stick is indicating where the sulfhydryl group would attach to the larger molecule. Over here, we're looking at an example of a molecule, but that particular molecule shown is not really important for our purposes, but something that you might want to keep in mind is that some amino acids, like cysteine, have a sulfhydryl group. Now that's really important because those sulfhydryl groups will help stabilize the protein structure by forming covalent bonds between the sulfhydryl groups. In sum, sulfhydryl groups are really important for protein structure. The last functional group that we're going to spend time discussing is the phosphate group. The phosphate group gets discussed a lot in biology. We'll be coming back to this quite often, and I want you to pay close attention to the phosphate group. You will see that there's glycerol phosphate over here as the example over in the box, but phosphate groups are on the nucleotides like ATP as well. The phosphate groups are very important biologically. One of the reasons why they're important is that they are ionic. They have multiple negative charges when in aqueous environment, which of course the cell is aqueous. They attract water quite readily because of that ionic nature. And if you look at this ball and stick structure, it's representing the phosphate group as it exists in water. So you have these red balls, which are the oxygen molecules. You'll notice that one of the oxygens is double bonded to the phosphorus that's there in that center, and the rest are single bonds. Ask yourself what happened to the second bond for oxygen. Doesn't oxygen need 2 covalent bonds to be satisfied? Yes, it does. So if you're looking at this phosphate group, you'll notice that the top oxygen is happy because it has 2 covalent bonds, sharing 2 pairs of electrons with that phosphate. This oxygen over here on the left is also happy because it has 1 bond with the phosphorus and the other bond holding the phosphorus to the larger molecule that it's attached to. But then we have these 2 other oxygens right here. They're indicated as ions. They're anions because they have a negative charge. What happened is that they have given up the hydrogen ions that had previously been attached. So the hydrogen ions have floated away in solution. So we're looking at this phosphate group, and the phosphates make the molecule negatively charged and very happy to dissolve in water. This table is from your book, but I'm not going to spend time on it. I'm just drawing your attention to the fact that it does go through the different groups that we've just been talking about. The only thing is that we have not spent time talking about ethers or esters. I've chosen to just talk about the 6 that we covered in this previous section. One group that is not on this table but is mentioned a few times as we move through the semester is a methyl group. A methyl group is a carbon that is bonded with 3 hydrogens. The 4th covalent bond for the carbon is where it is attached to the larger molecule. Methyl groups are important in gene regulation. They're used to signal areas of DNA that should be active or not. You may talk more about this in classes that spend more time on genetics, but I will bring that up briefly in future lectures, so I wanted to give you a heads up since we are in functional groups. This is a good place to break. We'll pick up the next video talking about macromolecules, the groups of large molecules so important to the functioning of cells. Until next time.